She came at my cow with a pitchfork, screaming that I was a demon and she was going to free my animals. 2 minutes later, she was face down in the mud, unconscious, and I had all of it on camera. I didn't start this war, but I ended it. I never thought I'd have to tackle a woman in yoga pants on my own land to protect a dairy cow. But here we are. And trust me, this ain't some made-up story. This actually happened, right here on my farm, just outside a small town in the northern Cape of South Africa. Now let me back up and tell you how we even got here. This farm, it's not just where I live. It's the beating heart of everything my parents built after crawling their way out of the dirt, literally and figuratively. My mom was the daughter of the racist man who used to own this land. My dad? A farmhand from Johannesburg's poorest neighborhood. When they fell in love, my grandfather, her dad, tried to beat my father to death and disowned her on the spot. That's how deep the hate ran back then. Years later, after the old man finally kicked the bucket, my folks used a proxy buyer to purchase the farm. Same land where my dad had once been treated like trash. And they flipped the whole thing. No chemicals, no industrial cruelty. Just an ethical, sustainable operation. Chickens running free, cows treated with respect. Everything grown the way it's supposed to be. Slow and honest. So yeah, when I say this place means something, I'm not talking about real estate value. I'm talking blood, scars, and redemption. That's why it burned so bad when the protesters started showing up. It started small. Handwritten signs at the edge of the property. Meat is murder. Farming equals enslavement. At first I thought, fine, let 'em yell, let 'em wave their signs and chant whatever they want. But then the yelling turned into vandalism, broken fences, graffiti. One morning I woke up to find one of my dairy cows slaughtered, left with a note carved into the barn wall. This is what you do. The hypocrisy made me want to scream. They killed a healthy animal to protest killing animals. That cow had a name. Her name was Blossom, and she'd never hurt anyone. So I got cameras. I hired security. I even stopped going into town unless it was absolutely necessary. And you know what? It worked. The cowards backed off, until one didn't. Her name wasn't really Karen, but I think you know the type. Blonde, sun hat, vegan activist with a GoPro strapped to her chest and a fire in her eyes that screamed, "I watched one Netflix documentary, and now I know better than you." She showed up one morning while I was feeding the chickens. No warning. Just stormed onto my property like she owned the place. "You're disgusting," she snapped. "Enslaving innocent creatures for your greed." I kept my head down and kept working. Chickens don't wait for ideology. "Ma'am," I said, "please don't enter my property. This is private land." She laughed. "Private property is a myth. Land doesn't belong to anyone." I ignored her. She followed me, clucking louder than the hens, babbling on about consent and cow trauma, and something about how I was no better than a colonizer. I nearly choked on my spit. When we reached the dairy barn, she wrinkled her nose. "You raise them, feed them from your hand, and then you murder them. You're sick." I turned around slow, looked her dead in the eye. "If you shut down this farm, these animals die. Not someday. Today. I've rescued half of them. If I can't keep this land, they go to feedlots. Or they get put down. You're not saving anyone." She stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You're just another privileged white man profiting from death." I stared at her, quiet for a second. Then I said, "Karen, if you want to talk about privilege, I suggest you look in a mirror. My father bled for this land. He was beaten to within an inch of his life for daring to love my mother. Don't you dare stand here and tell me about oppression." That hit a nerve. Her face flushed so fast it looked like a sunburn. She fumed, then pointed at one of the cows. A bull, actually. Big, peaceful, chewing cud. "I'm gonna milk that one," she said with smug triumph. I raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, that's a bull. I don't recommend it." She froze, then screamed. Next thing I know, I turn my back for 1 minute to check the feed levels, and when I turn around, she's holding one of my old pitchforks over Buttercup, one of my oldest cows. "I'll use your demon tool to free them," she shrieked. "If you won't stop this slaughter, I will." Now, I don't know if you've ever seen someone try to threaten a 200-pound animal with a blunt farming tool, but it's about as stupid as it sounds. Cows aren't dumb. They're just patient. But I wasn't. I charged. Fast. Grabbed the pitchfork and slammed into her with my shoulder. She flew back into the barn wall and collapsed in a puff of hay and ego. She let go of the pitchfork like it was on fire. For a second I thought she was out cold, but then she started scrambling toward me, arms flailing, eyes wild. "You're the real animal!" she screamed and swung a fist at my face. It was like watching a toddler throw a tantrum. I blocked her punch with the wooden handle and she crumpled like a sack of potatoes. She wasn't bleeding, just stunned, and frankly, she was lucky. I checked the camera angle. Perfect view. All of it. Recorded. Once I made sure my cow was fine, and she was. I called the cops and paramedics, told them everything, sent the footage to my lawyer within the hour. By the next day, I'd filed a lawsuit. Not just for trespassing, but assault, attempted harm of livestock, and destruction of property. And you know what? I won. Of course I did. The trial wasn't even close. Her lawyer tried to play the passion for animal rights card, but the judge saw through it fast. She got time in jail. Not years, but enough. And the police now have permission to enforce curfews and step in when protesters start targeting farms. I wish I could say she paid me damages. But nah, she didn't have much. Turns out passion doesn't pay well when you spend all your time live streaming rage in other people's fields. You want to know what I felt, standing in that courtroom, watching her squirm in her little second-hand suit? I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just tired. Tired of people thinking yelling louder makes them right. Tired of being called evil for trying to do the right thing the hard way. But most of all, I was tired of watching the animals suffer in the name of activism. I went home that night and sat with Buttercup, just listening to the wind move through the dry grass. She chewed her cud and bumped her head against my knee like nothing ever happened. That's when it hit me. People like Karen, they're not fighting for animals. They're fighting to feel powerful. And that's the most dangerous kind of person to put on your land. So who was really in the wrong here?